Good evening, and welcome to Neutral News, the only program that treats the political landscape less like a battlefield and more like a mysterious stain on the nation's carpet. Tonight we ask the question that has troubled philosophers, pub landlords, and anyone who has ever accidentally watched Prime Minister's questions. Why? Not in an existential sense, of course. We are not that ambitious. But simply, politicians. What is the case for their continued existence? We go now to our correspondent Susan, who has been bravely navigating the corridors of power, presumably with the map and a strong-smelling air freshener. Susan.
Neil, the case for politics, and by extension politicians, remains one of the great theoretical puzzles of our time. Extensive research suggests their primary function is to provide a sort of human buffer between the public and the terrifying, relentless march of actual events. They exist so that when something goes wrong, we have a specific person in a suit to shout at, rather than shaking our fists at the abstract concept of chaos.
So, they're essentially professional lightning rods for our collective frustration, a kind of public-facing customer service department for reality, where the goal is not to solve the problem, but to ensure the call lasts long enough for you to forget why you were angry.
Precisely, Neil. The political class operates on a principle very similar to that of a toddler's birthday party magician. There's a great deal of dramatic gesturing, things disappearing into boxes, and a constant low-level suspicion that none of this is quite real. The key is to maintain the illusion of control. For instance, the economy isn't a vast, unknowable force of global markets. It's a little red box that the Chancellor holds up twice a year, promising ye's put more good things in it this time.
And are these good things ever specified? Or is it more of a conceptual promise, like a voucher for one future prosperity, redeemable at a later unspecified date?
The language is crucial, Neil. Political promises are drafted with the same deliberate ambiguity as a horoscope. A pledge to strengthen communities, for example, could mean anything from funding a new library to simply encouraging neighbors to nod at each other more. This vagueness is a feature, not a bug. It allows for a 100% success rate. As the goalposts are not just moved, they are dismantled and sold for scrap.
It's a genius strategy. You can't be accused of breaking a promise if nobody, including yourself, was ever entirely sure what it was in the first place. But what about the day-to-day business of governing? The actual doing of things?
This is where we see the principle of performative action, Neil. A problem arises. The correct political response is not to solve the problem, but to be seen to be addressing it. This involves a carefully choreographed sequence of events. First, the announcement of an urgent review. Second, the formation of a special committee. And third, several months later, the publication of a landmark report, which is placed on a shelf and never spoken of again. The problem, by this point, has often either resolved itself or been replaced by a newer, more fashionable problem.
It's the political equivalent of putting a bowl over a spider and hoping it relocates of its own accord. But surely the public sees through this.
One might think so. However, the political system has a built-in defense mechanism, the opposition party. The role of the opposition is to propose a series of satirical solutions that are equally impractical but sound slightly different. If the government suggests solving traffic congestion by making all roads one-way heading north, the opposition will passionately argue they should all be one-way heading south. The ensuing debate is so profoundly confusing and tedious that the public loses the will to live, let alone follow the argument. They are left with the vague impression that the issue is very complex and that clever people are on the case.
So the two-party system isn't about choice. It's about generating a protective field of sheer boredom to shield politicians from scrutiny. A sort of administrative chaff deployed to jam the public's critical thinking.
You could see it that way. It's also a vital source of national entertainment. Prime Minister's Questions is a perfect example. It's less a forum for governance and more a piece of theatre, like a particularly aggressive pantomime where everyone boos the villain and nobody checks if the budget for the giant beanstalk is fiscally responsible. The goal is to produce a short, angry video clip that can be shared online, confirming everyone's pre-existing biases.
And the politicians themselves, the individuals. What sort of person is drawn to this life of performative action and strategic ambiguity?
Our research indicates the ideal candidate possesses the unshakable confidence of a man explaining your own job to you, combined with the short-term memory of a goldfish who has just sustained a head injury. They must be able to deliver a speech on the importance of integrity one day and then explain why a recently unearthed photograph of them wrestling a badger at a garden fete is taken out of context the next, without any sense of cognitive dissonance.
A truly unique skill set. It's almost a superpower. The ability to inhabit a world entirely free from the burdens of consistency or shame. Let's talk about manifestos, these great books of promises. Are they not the central contract with the people?
The Manifesto is perhaps the finest work of speculative fiction in the modern literary canon, Neil. It is a utopian document detailing a wonderful future that will regrettably be postponed due to unforeseen circumstances, a phrase which covers everything from a global recession to the photocopier breaking down. Reading a manifesto for clues about future policy is like reading the back of a cereal box to understand agricultural science. The contents are vaguely related, but mostly full of cartoon animals and prizes.
So, to summarize the case for politics as it stands, we have a class of people whose job is to absorb public anger, create the illusion of control through elaborate rituals of inaction, and engage in theatrical argument to distract us from the fact that very little is being done. They communicate in a language of profound vagueness and write epic works of fantasy every few years, none of which come true. Is that a fair assessment?
It is a commendably neutral summary of the available data, Neil. Their ultimate purpose, it seems, is to make the chaotic, unmanageable nature of human civilization feel like a deliberate, albeit poorly managed, project. They are the placebos for our societal anxieties.
A placebo. So politics is the sugar pill we take to convince ourselves someone is flying the plane, even when we can hear strange clanking noises from the cockpit and the pilot appears to be arguing with his own reflection. Thank you, Susan. It seems the case for politics is that it's a marginally better alternative than admitting we're all just improvising. A comforting, if expensive, fiction. Good night.